All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. It's an honor to, I thought I was taking one step backwards. Anyways, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Kyle, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. My sobriety date is 7/15/02, 19 and change, but who's counting, right? I have a sponsor who is actually speaking at the Appalachian Roundup this evening, and so I felt all the more compelled to step up. That is Don L. from Bellingham, Washington. Not only is he an awesome speaker, but he's a really good sponsor too, and grateful to have had good sponsorship, and grateful for the opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope. Hopefully more solution than problem. Hopefully I do my sponsor proud, and hopefully I carry the message that helped me to stay. Speakers are a big part of my recovery. I'll share a few stories about that a little further on here. But I have a few home groups now in this digital Zoom age, and one of them is Serenity Improvement Group. Really grateful to Stephen and Phil and all their support crew who helped make this meeting happen. This is a meeting that I like to call my Southern hospitality meeting. Everybody is super friendly in this meeting, and I felt welcomed right from the beginning. And I can assure you that when I stumbled into these rooms a while ago now, that had that not occurred, I would have been out in a quick minute. So I finally found the people that get me and that I get, and that I can turn to when life on life's terms is pushing me around a bit, which can happen on any given occasion, and that would be contingent on how close to the center of this group and program that I am at the time, and by the same token how close I am to my higher power at that time as well. And sometimes, surprisingly, my ego gets involved and wants to push my higher power and people that are trying to give me perspective aside and try and run the show. And guess what happens? Drum roll, please. I end up on my backside, lick my wounds, maybe do a 10-step or two, ask for some guidance, perspective from higher power, and trusted others, and sponsor, of course, and keep on trudging, baby. Anyways, I was born into an alcoholic family. I born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, and my mom and dad were two very different people. And dad was one of those madmen, an advertising guy, and he was kind of like the characters on that show, as I understood it, he was drinking, he was gambling, he was having improprieties with people besides my mom, and that led to a relatively early divorce. And I was 4, my brother was 2. My mom said, "You're the man of the house now," and I can assure you that was bad news for my little brother. Well, my mom got busy. She had been a stay-at-home mom, and then she had to take on 2-3 jobs. Dad moved in with his secretary, and they got busy in San Francisco, and we didn't see him that often. He was a no-show kind of guy. I will say, in retrospect, I understand that he did truly love my brother and I. My mom, maybe not so. What do I want to say? Maybe he and my mom were definitely not on the same page. And we were kids caught in the crossfire. They just bad talked about each other all the time. And that's just stuff that I know that a lot of people in these rooms have experienced as well. There was no physical violence, but there was a lot of verbal character assassination, that sort of thing. And one experience I'll mention when right before they divorced, they were fighting, and I came out of my bedroom crying because, you know, two people I cared about the most were at each other's throats. And I said, be God, be love, be anything. And you know, that stopped at that time, but it didn't stop it all the time. And like I said, we moved on. My brother and I, my mom's parents, my grandparents came up from LA and helped raise us. My grandmother, extremely kind, spiritual woman. I mean, one of the sweetest people I've ever met. And, you know, basically I was raised by my grandma, my mom, and, you know, yeah, I had really strong female figures in my life. I didn't have such strong male role models in my life early on. So that's just something that is the way it is, you know. And what do I want to say? In school and stuff, I was an overachiever. I was school president in elementary and junior high, much by my mom's nudging. She was a political activist. I didn't really talk much about her, but you know, we were in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 60s, and she was a political activist. Lots of rallies, and we went to the Angela Davis trials, and we were the hippie kids, and you know, got a lot of flack. That, you know, and divorce wasn't as common at that point, you know, and so, you know, we were kind of outcasts. We moved into public housing, and my grandparents lived in one apartment, and we lived in another apartment there. And my mom was a huge proponent of education, and she got my brother and I into private high schools. And those, you know, those were good experiences. Although, because you know, we came from public housing, and there were some folks that were driving at 16 years old, driving BMWs to the school. You know, there was definitely some less than going on. And I had some early experiences with alcohol. I didn't really you know, we had fun. It got crazy. And then, you know, junior high one time got really out of control. There was a girl that I liked. I didn't have enough courage to tell her until I was totally slaughtered. I was taking huge hits off a bottle of scotch that we stole from a friend's liquor cabinet. And we went over to these girls' house, and allegedly were flirting with them in whatever, 7th, 8th grade and stuff like that. And you know, I was trying to prove everybody, you know, like how cool I was by taking these huge slugs off the bottle, and everything was going great. And then surprisingly, I went flying by the mark. And next thing I know, it felt like somebody cold cocked me. I was on the floor. I was crying. I was saying how much I love this girl, and I hadn't had the guts to tell her, and all this business. And the parents are like, everything okay up there in the attic? And you know, everybody's going, shut up, man, you're gonna blow it, you're gonna ruin everything, you know. And and so, you know, my goal was to be cool. The outcome, surprisingly, was I was absolutely uncool. And you know, I've heard stories where people said, you know, it was crazy, people thought it was funny, I was happy for the attention, and I couldn't wait to do it again. Well, I wasn't exactly that way. I was actually like, alcohol bad, can't really keep wheels on cart, don't do, you know, that. And so I got into sports. And you know, that's not a new theme in the rooms. I've heard lots of people talk about it. And you know, I got pretty good at soccer. I you know, started varsity in high school. I went to college. I started varsity as a freshman. And you know, things were going okay, but the fear around, you know, having to move from high school to, I actually came to college up in Portland, Oregon. It was a good school, good private college, you know. And we got a little bit of break on it, but my mom was paying a lot. And you know, and I just what I want to say, you know, the pressure came calling. And I know that now that when the pressure is calling and I'm in fear, that disease is licking its chops, you know. And I started drinking and partying a lot, and the wheels started coming off the cart, and I couldn't stop at this time, you know. There were outside issues as well. I will say that some of those outside issues were psychoactive in nature. And I think, as it says in the literature, for better or for worse, I was on a low level search for spirituality. You know, I didn't really understand it, but that was something that I found myself striving for in the confusion. And I can assure you that the cocktail that began always with booze, and then other things were added to it to try and get to that sweet spot, you know, for the, you know, 4 or 5 times that I had gotten to a place where I felt comfortable about myself, about the world around me, about the people around me, and that I felt camaraderie with those people. I chased hundreds of times with poor results, you know, where I found myself down the rabbit hole in dangerous situations and confused situations and terrifying situations. And what do I want to say? Okay, so I drank my way out of that school, and then I transferred down to San Francisco State, and you know, was going to redshirt there, but the drink was definitely starting to subvert how much I was willing to train to stay in shape and focus to achieve at that level. And you know, the bottle was becoming way more important, you know, and that's obviously something that I've heard before. And so I was starting to get frustrated, angry. You know, this was all, my mom was, you know, busy with work. I didn't really have a lot of friends to talk to and process what was happening. And I was just trying to figure it out with, as Clancy likes to say, this disease of perception, you know, and my disease of perception, you know, who I am, who what's going on in the world, how I'm dealing with it. And you know, I had a very distorted sense of how that was all going down. And so, you know, my best laid plans were to flip a coin, go left, go right. Surprisingly, 9 times out of 10, I would run into a brick wall full of bruises, blood, humiliation, etc. And so what would I do? I would jump back into the bottle for solace. And yeah. So I was on a very slow spiral towards the bottom. Let's see, what do I want to say? I always loved music. My mom introduced me to music way back when. She used to take us to shows back in the day, you know, 1966 Grateful Dead, as well as had, you know, all the Beatles albums at the house and everything. And that music was always playing. And I should note also that my mom did remarry when I was 8 and then divorced again when I was 14. But my stepdad was a really good guy, and he was a normie, and he was a kind soul. I'm actually still in touch with him. He's remarried, and I have stepbrothers and stepsisters and a stepmom as a result of him staying in my life. And I'm grateful for his love and support, as you know. And it was funny when I talked to them, you know, when I finally made amends to them and talked to them about my alcoholism. Apparently, you know, I kept it pretty low key. You know, I kept it. They said, oh, we had no idea, you know. So I was, you know, I was sneaky from the get-go. And I should say, like, even though I was school president and all that business, I was also running around with, and this is, I'm going to bounce back and forth a little bit. I hope that's okay. It won't be the first time you've heard a share like that. But anyways, when I was back in junior high with some you know, shenanigan loving young idiots like myself, this was around the day of CB radio. This is kind of a good one, I think. And this one guy had a CB base station and a police scanner, and then he had a couple CB walkie-talkies, and we thought that we were like this really cool, organized crack group of professional troublemakers, and we would, you know, do stuff like throw rocks at cars and break windows at businesses, and then we would listen to the guy would listen to the police scanner, let us know where the police were, and then we would move to another part of town and just get them running in circles. And you know, we thought we were really slick. One of the little brothers got popped at one point and spilled the beans, and that was the end of that. But you know, that whole Jekyll and Hyde, you know, on the one hand, I'm supposed to be the honorable school president, and on the other hand, I'm running around, you know, throwing rocks at cars on a Saturday night to get my jollies. So fast forwarding back to music and back to the frustration, anger, and now erupting rage that I was starting to feel, because what had happened, second place at San Francisco State, I was playing club soccer on the side and playing for some apprenticing on some teams where some people were getting paid and that sort of thing. I blew my knee out, and I lost 3 of my 4 ligaments, and that was the end of my illustrious career. And big surprise here, folks, I had no backup plan. You know, so what am I gonna do? My life is ruined. Poor me, poor me. Guess what? Drum roll, please. Pour me another. And like I said, music had been a big part, and the music came together with the anger and the rage, and that was right around the time punk rock was just starting to blossom, and I was all in. And even though my knee was a little bit messed up, I had a pretty decent surgery on it, and so I would go mix it up in the pit. And my mom and I weren't getting along too well. She tried her best. She did everything she could to like keep me on the straight and narrow. And, you know, she told me to go right, I was going left, and just to spite her, you know, and regardless of whether, you know, and always the plans that I had blew up in my face. And she, you know, tried to be there again and again. A lot of family tragedy occurred in a pretty short succession. First, my grandparents were in a crosswalk in front of the apartments that we lived in, and they got run down in the crosswalk by some women in the middle of the day coming back, ironically, from a cocktail party. And they weren't killed, but you know, my grandmother in particular got severely injured. Her pelvis was shattered, and because they were wards, because we had no financial resources really, they became wards of the county, and they were placed in separate rest homes. And my grandmother's health fell very quickly. Like I said, my mom and I weren't on good terms. She had thrown me out a little bit before then. And I was just living in, you know, I don't know, you know, flop houses through, you know, roommate referral services and this and that. And I was cooking in restaurants and going to punk rock shows, and that was about the gist of it, really, you know. And the money from working was either going for rent or for booze for the most part. Anyways, my mom called to say that my grandmother had taken a fever, and it looked as though the end was near. And I said, well, you know, I need to come down and say, pay my respects and tell her how much she means to me. And my mom's like, I don't want you down here, you know. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I'm coming, you know. And so I got to the rest home. My mom was crying and had a cold washcloth dabbing my grandmother's brow, and said, I told you not to come. I said, you know, I'm really sorry. You know, I know you and I aren't good right now, but, you know, I mean, my grandmother, she did everything, you know. I mean, she was always there for my brother and I, and particularly me. I got thrown out of school a lot. My brother wasn't as bad. By the same token, my brother doesn't have the gene, and he just was kind of the introvert. I was the extrovert. And So anyways, she said, you know what? I need you to get out of here. I want you to know I don't have two sons anymore. I just have one. I don't want to see you again. And I said, I wish we could have done this another time, but if you need to do this now, okay, and I gave my grandmother a kiss, and I told her I loved her, and I kissed her for my brother as well. And I didn't see my mom for about 6 or 7 years after that. And my brother was sort of the intermediary. I didn't really understand how much of pressure that put on him. I was surprisingly as an alcoholic in my cups. Like I was selfish, self-centered, self-seeking all the way. I heard a really good term the other day in a meeting, and I'm gonna steal it. I sort of I sort of adjusted it a little bit, but somebody was talking about it, and I was a comfort-seeking comet with a very long tail of chaos and destruction behind me, and that kind of describes where I was, and so my mom and I had a lot of unfinished business. We started to get back together. We got into some counseling, but then she died of a brain aneurysm day before Mother's Day, and that was, needless to say, really, really tough. And she had donated her body to science, and I was the eldest, so they were asking me, can we have all these different parts of her and this and that? And I, after a few different body parts, I said, you know what, I'm just going to say, you can have it all. That's what she wanted. I'm going to have to let you go now, because I just, I was devastated. My mom, she was my hero, and she was my nemesis. And I know now, through doing the work in this program, that she loved me unconditionally, and she always wanted the best for me, because of my ego and self-will, and because I was selfish and self-centered and stuck in the throes of this disease, where I could not see clearly and understand clearly what was going on around me. I just thought that she was trying to control me, and that may be true, but she was trying to steer me in the right direction, but I wasn't having it. And there's been many times I have a lot of grief and regret and about that sort of stuff. And I wish that I had heeded so much of her advice, because it was on the money, and she wanted nothing but the best for me. This part is going to sound like a little bit of a bad country song, but I had gone to a grief counselor for my mom's death, and I went in we had seen each other a couple sessions, and I came in for a session right after Memorial Day weekend, and the people at the office were running around and looking at me in a concerned manner, and were whispering to one another. And another counselor came up and said, I got some bad news for you. Your grief counselor drowned over Memorial Day weekend. He was fly fishing. He slipped in the river, and his waders filled up, and then his lungs filled up with water, and that was that. And they didn't say exactly like that, but and I just thought, I was in a free fall. I was like, what's next? And running in the punk rock circles, same things were happening on that end as well. Like there were some, in my opinion, some extremely bright and talented people, but I also knew that there was a lot of chaotic, tragic people, and some of those were the same people, and people were ODing, they were taking their lives. I was in San Francisco during the AIDS epidemic and everything, and it was really hectic. A lot of people were dying all around me. There was the restaurant that I worked at, like 8 people died in about 2 months from AIDS and HIV and all that stuff. And it was just like, the way that I sort of saw it and rationalized the whole thing is like, gee whiz, I must be with the cool kids, everybody's dying around here. That must make us, living on the edge, baby. What do they say? Live fast, leave a good looking corpse. And things were just starting to spiral out of control. And as they had been ad nauseum. And my best laid plans were, take a hostage and find a good girl that could bail me out of this. And I'd have to say, to be fearless, thorough, and honest. I used women all the time, to get what I wanted, and I would watch for which girl was getting drunk like me, and I would back off a little bit and try and ply my charm, right? And I can assure you that that's been a huge part of my step work. And I have had the chance to work the steps a few times, and each time a little more fearless, thorough, and honest. I'm going to try and get into the solution here pretty quick. And things were okay with the marriage for a while, but she knew what she was getting into. She knew who I was. And she said, look here, all right, here's what's going to happen. 1, we're going to get married. 2, we're going to have a kid. And 3, we're going to buy a house together. And I need you to like step up and get a job that can contribute to that in a more substantial manner than what you're doing right now. And I had no alternate plan. I didn't see any other way. So I said, okay, just being honest. And things were okay for a while until they weren't, until, the pressures of being a father. We had this wonderful daughter, and I'm so grateful. That was, I've had a few spiritual awakenings, and that I believe led me into the program of AA and to a power greater than myself that I didn't really understand. And I can assure you, as a punk rocker, I didn't have, much respect or inclination for organized religion. That's for sure. I do think that I did have an inclination for spirituality, as I mentioned before. I just didn't know how to get there. Let's see. Just off the camera here, folks, is my awesome wife, who I will get to here shortly, but she is giving me some tips, and she's hopefully keeping me on time here. And so anyways, the pressures of being a father, being a homeowner, being, a husband, started to come calling, and with it, like I was back in the bottle, and I was trying to hide it from my wife. So I lost this high paying job. She was pretty concerned. And we were fighting about money one night, and we were in the living room getting into it with one another. And my daughter was in the room, and she was, like about 1-2 years old. And in the middle of this back and forth with my daughter's mom, I looked down at her, and I saw her looking up at us with that fear and confusion and sadness. And I couldn't help but flash on myself when I was a kid, looking up at my parents doing the same thing. And I thought, oh my God, here I am completing the cycle. I didn't want to be my dad, ended up just like him. And here we are. I desperately want to get off this ride. Please help me. That was a prayer that I put out there. I didn't understand who I was saying it to. Anyways, shortly after that, we went into marriage counseling. This was a God shot. The counselor was versed in 12-step. The marriage failed, but I stayed sober. And I admitted in that when I got 12-step that maybe I have a problem with alcohol. I knew I had a problem with alcohol. I was a home brewer. I brewed barley wine, and the label for my beer was a guy that was sprawled out in front of a bar in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, where I had been bar hopping with some other fools. And I had my camera and took a picture of him, and he had his his fly undone, and he was relieving himself in a horizontal position. It was a very honorable shot, and a lot of people thought it was me. They said, "Dude, is that you on your beer label?" And anyways, you know, another proud moment, but I digress. Anyways, I went into rehab. This was a great rehab for the reason that, you know, they gave us a good base understanding of what was going on as far as alcoholism, what, wow, why, how. But they also said, look here, this is not going to keep you sober. The long game, what's going to keep you sober the rest of your life, if you're willing to do the work, are the programs of AA and other 12-step that deal with alcohol and outside issues. And I heard that, you know, and I wanted this thing desperately. And I was one of those guys who, you know, was all gung ho. And I got teased by some of these people in the rehab. And I was also, I understood service, and I gave back to the rehab. And I was the, I don't know, I organized these alumni potlucks and this and that for the rehab folks. And one of the lessons that, one of the things that I saw were some of the people that I went through rehab with go out and come back again and again. And that wasn't lost on me, you know, and they had already gotten us into the rooms. I want to tell a story about my first meeting, and it was at the East Bay Intergroup in Oakland on Telegraph Avenue. And you had to go up probably 24 stairs, but I'll call them 12. Anyways, I got up there, I'd read the schedule wrong. It was a young people's meeting. And, you know, there were a bunch of little, and I was in my early 40s at that point, you know. I was not a young people. I was certainly immature. So I guess I qualify on some levels, but, you know, there were all these kids there, and they were all laughing and excited. I sat down, and this one little guy comes up to me and says, "Hey man, you're sitting in my seat." I was like, man, I'm gonna either, I wanted to punch the kid, but I just got up and moved. I don't know, you know, I didn't, there was something going on. And anyways, these kids started crying about stuff that I had done dozens of hundreds of times. And I was like, this is AA. I'm done for, you know, this is not good. And I don't have a backup plan yet again. I was ready to storm out of there. I was all upset and everything. But for some reason, I stuck around, and I pretended to read the flyers on the wall of the meeting place. I was looking at the steps, and I was like, 4, 5, 8, 9, no way, no way. I could get with some of them. The spiritual steps I was willing to consider, but the accountability, responsibility, I knew exactly what I was doing when I was drinking and doing other things. And, you know, that just forced me deeper in the bottle due to the shame and guilt that I had around the way that I did what I did to get what I wanted, manipulating people, places, and things. So anyways, one person came up out of that crowd and said, "Hey, I haven't seen you before. Are you new?" And of course, you know, I got all defensive. "Why would you think I'm new, huh?" And they said, "I don't know, you know, I just haven't seen you before. My name is, what's your name?" And of course I didn't give my real name, you know, but they said, "Hey, listen, you know, I know that tonight wasn't a great meeting for you, but tomorrow, why don't you check out this other meeting? Tell this person that I sent you. And I think you're going to hear some more people that are speaking to you, you know, that you didn't really hear tonight." And I said, "Okay, sure, no problem." You know, and my usual MO would just be tell people what they wanted to hear so I could get rid of them and go do what I wanted to do. But I actually went to that meeting, and I actually did hear people talking about stuff that I had done. And more importantly, you know, feeling and understanding what was going on, and how it made them feel, and how it forced them deeper into the bottle. And I could absolutely relate to that. And somebody at that meeting said, "Hey, listen, tomorrow, go to this meeting, tell this guy I sent you, and I think you're going to hear more of the same." And I did, you know, and that's how it started. And before we graduated the rehab, we needed to have a sponsor. And I was like getting all nervous because the time was coming up, and 28-day spin dry. And so I'm in the meetings going, "Hey, I really need a sponsor. I got to have a sponsor before graduating." And surprisingly, nobody was coming up to me to say, "Hey, I'll sponsor you," because they're all like, "Yeah, I don't know about this guy. He seems a little anxious and upset." But and somebody actually came up and said, hey, look, you might want to take it down a notch in your shares, and you might want to go to the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting, and just see if you can talk about it a little bit more calmly and matter of factly. So I took the suggestion, I gave it a try, and there was a guy there that had 18 months, and he shrugged his shoulder and said, hey, no problem, man. I'll take you through the steps. And I was floored. I thought, I wanted to kiss the ground the guy walked on. I was, I didn't exactly know what I was getting into with the steps, but he was the perfect sponsor for me at the time. He just kept me moving, and some of my efforts on that first time through, I'm not going to lie, they were half measures, maybe 3/4 measures. So I got a little bit out of them. They didn't avail me nothing. They definitely availed me something. And there was a lot of, in 4, 5, and 8, 9, there were people that I left off those lists on purpose, but I started to go through that process, and he just kept saying, good job, let's keep moving here. I got to tell you about the third step. We got into, he says, okay, so here's the deal. Come over to my apartment at this time on this day, and we're going to do the step 3 together. And I said, okay. And I really didn't know what to expect, because I didn't really understand the literature and the program as well at that time. And so, we talked a little bit about a concept of a power greater than myself. And he said, like in the literature, it can be anything that you want. And it can be, it doesn't have to be a damning or condemning God. My experiences with organized religion, in my twisted perspective, was that, it felt like they reached out to us as a divorced family divorced, living in public housing, like just as a self-promotion act for them, and that I didn't really feel like they cared about us at all, or anybody was being particularly genuine. But what did I know? I was a real skeptical, scared, young kid. But anyways, so my higher power tends to be a little bit more female than male, because like I said, I was raised by my grandma and my mom, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. I was just grateful that we got to choose our own concept. And I've always found that in all the meetings, that everybody's been open, and I try and be open as well. Whereas before I wasn't a big fan of organized religion, I understand that there's various ways to get to our spirituality, and that everybody has a different one. And I can go to a church service and feel that going on there, as well as, the ways that I get to my higher power and my spirituality, and all good. And so my co-pilot here is giving me some good orderly direction. I got 10 minutes approximately, Stephen. Is that about right? Okay. Well, I'm up to step 3, 4, 5, something like that. So we're doing okay. Anyways, yeah. So I'm in this guy's apartment. He says, okay, we're going to kneel down now next to each other and say the 3rd step prayer. And he put his arm around my shoulder, and I thought for sure he was making a pass at me. And I found out that he wasn't. And I also found out that I felt something spiritual. I don't know what that was at the time, but I knew something. There was something happening, and I can assure you that this person that came in with no trust, no hope, no faith, started to have a little bit of each, that this AA thing might work. Another story that I want to talk about in regards to a spiritual experience was my 6, 7, excuse me. So in the big book there, as we know, there's not a lot on 6 and 7, a couple sentences. And then, Spons told me to go home and pray and meditate. 7-step prayer. Creator, I offer myself. I'm now willing that you should have all of me, the good and the bad. I pray now that you remove every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. And then I was meditating, and it was a cold, dark night. There was no moon in the sky, but there was a lot of stars sparkling out there. And suddenly something came to me. You know, all those stars, shivering denizens in the cold darkness, were starting to sparkle and get their shine back and get their life back and get their love and their personality and their character back, you know, without the need of booze or other things. And I saw that. And, you know, I don't know where that came from. I do know now. I didn't know then. Then I saw lines connecting all those stars, and those lines created a net. And I knew in that moment that that was the net of recovery, of AA, and that it would catch me. And that if I fell, it would catch me, set me down, and I could keep moving. And I knew that people in these rooms cared about me, and I knew that I cared about people in these rooms. I knew we were rooting for each other as we shared our trials and tribulations and our victories in the meetings, you know. And very early on, I came to a revelation in a meeting one time where it's like, hey, I haven't even thought about drinking for, God, at least a week, maybe two, because I'd been so busy getting involved in this program and people like, you know, getting me into service and that sort of thing. And it felt good. You know, it felt like I was developing some integrity finally, you know, that I had always wanted to, but had no clue how to get there. Left to my own devices, my solution to the problem is way worse than the original problem, I can assure you. And that happened ad nauseum. So I had, I've had many other God shots and spiritual experiences since then, you know, that have, last one I want to talk about was when I was reading an amends letter to my mom, you know, because she died 15 years before I got into recovery. You know, like how was I going to make that right? And they said, look, man, just write this down, read it to her at a spot that you feel is appropriate. And I read it at a place where we had a memorial for her up on Mount Tamalpais in Mill Valley, just outside San Francisco. And at her service, at her memorial, she loved music, and particularly classical music. And there's a composer by the name of Ralph Vaughan Williams, and there's a song called "The Lark Ascending," and it's a beautiful song. And I'm reading this amends letter to her, and this one was particularly fearless, thorough, and honest, you know. And I'd always had a spiritual connection with her, and as I was reading it, something caught my eye off to the right, and there was a hawk that had caught an updraft in a valley, one over from where we were at, and it was just hovering there right at eye level. And I saw it, and I know it saw me, and I knew my mom was there. You know, and before I would have just used rationalization and justification to downplay it and just say, that's a bunch of bull, you know. But I decided, I chose, this is a program of choice, you know, I chose to believe otherwise. And I felt forgiven. I felt clean. I felt also that not only my mom was part of my higher power, my higher posse, as it were, but all the people who had passed, who had been there for me, my grandmother, you know, my alcoholic dad, you know, all the people who I dearly wish had gotten this program and, you know, were taken by this patient, persistent, cunning, baffling, powerful disease. We're all up there rooting for me. and I feel as though the best way that I can honor them is to fight a little bit harder each day for my sobriety date. It becomes more sacred to me, July 15 of 02, and that I can honor them by staying clean and sober and passing this amazing gift of this amazing program on one day at a time. And in my maintenance steps, and I've continued to go through all that other stuff. I sponsor other guys. I've learned a lot about that, about myself and about them, and how, the phrase I initially thought was corny, like, when you pick up the phone to call somebody, you're not bothering them. You're probably going to be helping them. And surprisingly, they might be up in their head about something that you're up in your head about. And when the two of you talk about it, I'm going to bet you a nickel that both of you, after hanging up that phone, are going to feel a little bit better. And also not only about yourselves, but about the power and the love of this program. And there's so many times when I've been working with sponsees, when they've been dealing with stuff that I've been dealing with, and they've given me amazing perspectives, that I couldn't consider with this brilliant mind and this huge ego. And my sponsor, I've had a few, and I've been blessed with good sponsorship. I'd like to say that I made good choices, but I feel like these gentlemen were placed in my path, and that I was willing to follow the suggestions. My Bay Area sponsor, John F., he passed in November of 2020. Was it 2021 or 2020? I think it's 20. In 2020. And man, he was such a good guy, and he was such a humble guy. And one of the things that I knew he was dying of cancer, and I ended up from December of 2019 to May of 2020, I had cancer. I had throat cancer as a result of HPV. And so the two of us were going through cancer at the same time. I was in touch with him in the Bay Area, and I had a Portland sponsor as well. Anyways, I went down to see him because he wasn't doing so good. And I just, we went to a meeting together, and after the meeting, I lost it, and I embraced him, and I was crying on his shoulder. And I told him, thank you for saving my life. Because he was the guy that lit the fire. He was the guy that said, get in the car. When I was talking about all the stuff that was ruining my life, he said, well, that's too bad. Get in the car. We're going to a meeting. And, I said, I couldn't have done this without you. I so appreciate how you opened up this world of AA for me. And he just shrugged, man. He said, I didn't do anything, man. You did it. You were one of the few people that I've sponsored, and who was willing to follow the suggestions. And I found that to be true on my end. I haven't gotten a ton of guys through the steps, but there have been a few, and that's okay. Like Lois said to Bill, it's kept me sober, Anyways, I appreciate the opportunity to be of service here. And I hope welcome to the new folks. I don't know who's new here, but I hope you heard something that made sense to you. This was good. I didn't have time to get in my head about this. Thank you, Stephen. This was kind of flying mostly off the cuff. I had some notes from a previous talk, but as you can see, I was looking at the camera, not at the notes. So yeah, definitely from the heart. And there's so many people in this meeting that I've gotten to know and love, and I so appreciate you all. And I'm going to keep coming back. I hope you do too. Much love. Thank you for the opportunity.